The stars looked cold and distant through the bridge window of the new dawn. Captain Jake Morrison stood with his hands behind his back, watching the massive space station grow larger as they approached. Nexus Prime was the biggest thing humans had ever built in space, but it wasn't human. It belonged to the Galactic Coalition, and soon humans might never see it again. "Captain, we're getting a signal from the station," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her position at the communications desk. Her voice was tight with worry. Everyone on the ship knew what this meeting meant. Jake nodded slowly. "Put it through." The screen flickered to life, showing a tall, thin alien with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. This was Administrator Velketh of the Ethereal Collective, the species that had founded the Coalition over 300 years ago. "Captain Morrison," Velketh's voice was smooth but cold, "you are cleared to dock at Bay 7. The Council will see you in 1 hour." "Thank you, Administrator," Jake replied, keeping his voice steady. The screen went dark. Jake turned to his crew. They were good people, all of them. Amy had been with him for 5 years. Chief Engineer Bob Turner had served on human ships for 20 years. Navigator Lisa Park could plot a course through any star system with her eyes closed. They deserved better than this. "You all know why we're here," Jake said quietly. "The Coalition wants us gone. They say we're too dangerous, too aggressive. They're afraid of us. Afraid of us." Amy shook her head. "We've helped them build hospitals. We've shared our medical knowledge. We've never started a war. They don't see it that way," Jake said. "They think we expand too fast. They think we want to take over their territory. They think our weapons are too advanced." Bob Turner looked up from his engineering station. "Our weapons? We learned how to make them from Coalition textbooks. We just made them better." That's the problem," Jake said. "We made them too much better." The docking process was smooth and quiet. As Jake walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, he noticed how few humans were around. Most of the other species in the Coalition looked like they belonged here. The Ethereal Collective with their tall, graceful bodies. The Corven with their thick armored skin. The Zephyrian with their 4 arms and quick movements. Humans looked different. Shorter, stockier, with too many teeth and eyes that seemed to see everything. The council chamber was a huge room with seats arranged in a circle. Representatives from all 12 Coalition species sat in their designated areas. Jake saw the human section was almost empty. Only Admiral Lisa Carter was there. Sitting alone in the center, Admiral Carter was a tough woman in her 50s who had commanded human forces for over a decade. She had short gray hair and hard eyes that had seen too many battles. When she saw Jake, she nodded once. No words were needed. "The Council will come to order," announced Prime Counselor X9, the senior Corvan representative. His voice was deep and rumbling like rocks grinding together. "We are here to discuss the final disposition of the human species in Coalition space." Jake took his seat behind Admiral Carter as the session began. One by one, the Coalition representatives stood to speak. Their words were polite, but the message was clear. Humans had to go. "The human expansion rate exceeds all established parameters," said the ethereal representative. "In 46 years, they have established 237 colonies. This is unprecedented and dangerous. Their military technology advances at an alarming rate," added the Zephyrian delegate. "They have developed weapon systems that surpass our own in less than half a century. Their territorial behavior is incompatible with Coalition principles," said another voice. "They claim entire star systems for themselves rather than sharing resources." Jake felt his anger rising, but he kept quiet. This was Admiral Carter's show. When the accusations were finished, Admiral Carter stood slowly. She looked around the circle of alien faces, each one avoiding her eyes. "You invited us to join you," she said simply. "We didn't ask to be here. We didn't force our way in. You came to Earth and said you wanted us as partners." "That was before we understood your true nature," replied the ethereal representative. "Our true nature?" Admiral Carter's voice got louder. "You mean the nature that helped you cure the Red Plague on Corvan Prime? The nature that designed the new water purification systems for your desert worlds? The nature that gave you medical technology? That saved millions of lives? Your contributions are acknowledged, said Prime Counselor X9. But your aggressive expansion and military development cannot be ignored. Aggressive expansion? Admiral Carter laughed, but there was no humor in it. We colonized empty worlds. Dead rocks that nobody wanted? We made them livable. We grew food where nothing had grown before. We built cities in places you said were impossible to settle. You move too fast, said the Zephyrian delegate. You change too much, too quickly. This destabilizes the established order. The established order, Admiral Carter repeated. You mean the order where nothing changes for centuries? Where the same species rule the same territories forever? Where new ideas are dangerous? Jake watched the alien faces around the room. Some looked uncomfortable, but most seemed determined. They had made up their minds before this meeting ever started. The vote will now be taken, announced Prime Counselor X9. All those in favor of expelling the human species from Coalition space. One by one, 11 lights appeared on the voting board. 11 species voting to throw humanity out of the galaxy's most powerful alliance. All those opposed? A single light appeared. Prime Counselor X9 had voted against the expulsion. The motion passes, X9 announced, his voice heavy with regret. Humanity is hereby expelled from Coalition space. You have 1 standard year to remove all human presence from Coalition territory. Admiral Carter stood in the silence that followed. Her face showed no emotion, but Jake could see the pain in her eyes. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. Someday you're going to need us. And when that day comes, I hope we're feeling generous. She turned and walked out of the chamber. Jake followed her along with the few other human observers. Behind them, the council chamber fell silent as they walked back to the docking bay. Admiral Carter finally spoke. Get word to all human ships and colonies. We have 1 year to pack up and leave. Make sure everyone knows this isn't our choice. Where will we go? Jake asked. Admiral Carter looked out at the stars through a viewport. Out there, beyond their borders. We'll find our own way, like we always have. The New Dawn undocked from Nexus Prime 3 hours later. As they flew away from the massive station, Jake watched it shrink in the distance. Somewhere behind them, the Coalition was already planning how to seal their borders and keep humanity out forever. Set course for Earth, Jake ordered. We've got work to do. The stars ahead looked cold and distant, but they were still there, waiting. Humanity would find a way to reach them, with or without the Coalition's help. They always did. 25 years had passed since the last human ship crossed the Coalition border. Dr. Alex Turner remembered that day clearly. He had been a young scientist then, fresh out of university and full of hope about working with alien technology. Now he was the head of the Terran Research Institute, and everything had changed. Alex stood in his laboratory on Mars, looking at the latest test results. The numbers were incredible, even by human standards. In just 25 years, humanity had advanced more than they had in the previous 100 years combined. Dr. Turner, the quantum jump test is ready, called out his assistant. Dr. Jenny Walsh. She was one of the new generation of scientists who had grown up after the expulsion. To her, the Coalition was just a story from history books. How many successful jumps have we made now? Alex asked, walking over to the control panel. 47, Jenny replied with a smile, and each one gets faster. Commander Hayes made the trip from Earth to Alpha Centauri in 3 hours yesterday. The old Coalition hyperspace network would have taken 2 days. Alex nodded. When the Coalition had cut off human access to their hyperspace lanes, it had seemed like a death sentence. How could humanity explore the galaxy without faster-than-light travel? But humans had done what they always did when faced with impossible problems. They had found a new way. The quantum jump drive was completely different from Coalition technology. Instead of using the existing hyperspace network, human ships could create their own temporary tunnels through space. It was dangerous, complicated, and required massive amounts of energy. But it worked, And it was getting better every day? Any word from the mining operations? Alex asked. Colonel Parker sent a report this morning, Jenny said, pulling up a holographic display. The automated mining fleet has established operations in 17 star systems. They're sending back more raw materials than we can process. Alex smiled. The Coalition had always been careful about mining operations. They used small teams and worked slowly to avoid disturbing local ecosystems. Humans had taken a different approach. They had built self-replicating mining robots that could strip an entire asteroid field clean in months. Some people called it wasteful. Alex called it efficient. When you were cut off from the rest of the galaxy, you needed resources fast. Dr. Turner, you need to see this, called out Dr. Mike Chun from across the lab. He was working on the long-range sensor project, trying to build detection systems that could see farther than anything the Coalition had ever developed. Alex walked over to Mike's station. The young scientist looked excited and worried at the same time. What is it? Alex asked. I've been monitoring the edge of Coalition space, Mike said, pointing to a star map on his screen. Look at these energy readings. Alex studied the data. The numbers were strange, unlike anything in the Coalition databases they had copied before the expulsion. The energy signatures were massive, but they moved in patterns that didn't match any known technology. How far away are these readings? Alex asked. About 50 light-years beyond the Coalition border, Mike replied, but they're moving toward Coalition space. Whatever they are, they're big and they're fast. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He had been so focused on human development that he hadn't thought much about what else might be out there in the galaxy. The Coalition controlled a large section of space, but it was still just a small part of the galaxy. Keep monitoring those signals, Alex said, and send a copy of this data to Earth. President Price needs to know about this. Meanwhile, on the other side of the solar system, Commander Rita Hayes was preparing for another test flight. She commanded the fastest ship in the human fleet, a sleek vessel called the Star Runner. It was built using the new manufacturing techniques that humans had developed since the expulsion. Rita had been one of the first pilots to test the quantum jump drive. She remembered the early days when half the test flights ended in disaster. Ships would disappear into quantum space and never come back. Others would emerge with their hulls twisted into impossible shapes. But humans had kept trying, kept improving, kept pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Star Runner, this is Control, came the voice of Flight Director Sam Parker over the radio. You are cleared for quantum jump to the Kepler system. Copy that, Control, Rita replied, checking her instruments one final time. Beginning jump sequence. The quantum jump drive powered up with a deep humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Rita felt the familiar tingling sensation as the ship's quantum field generators created a bubble of twisted space around her vessel. Jump in 3, 2, 1, she announced. The stars outside her window suddenly stretched into long lines of light. For a moment that felt like an eternity, Rita existed in a space between spaces where the normal rules of physics didn't apply. Then reality snapped back into focus, and she was looking at a different set of stars. Star Runner to Control, she said into her radio. Jump successful. I'm in the Kepler system. Time from initiation to completion, 2 hours and 43 minutes. Excellent work, Rita, came Sam's voice. That's a new record, Rita smiled. Each successful jump brought humanity closer to true freedom of movement in space. The Coalition had tried to cage them, but humans had found a way to fly free, back. On Earth, President Helen Price was reviewing the latest population reports. The numbers were staggering. When humanity had been expelled from Coalition space, they had controlled about 200 colonies. Now, they had over 1,000 worlds under human control. The growth hadn't been easy. Without Coalition trade networks, humans had been forced to become completely self-sufficient. They had to grow their own food, build their own ships, and develop their own technology. But they had done it. Cities like New Tokyo had grown from small mining outposts to major industrial centers with millions of inhabitants. Agricultural worlds in the outer systems fed the growing population. Manufacturing planets churned out everything from consumer goods to massive starships. "Madam President," said her aide, Captain Bill Rogers, "we're getting reports from the defense stations. Long-range sensors are detecting unknown energy signatures near Coalition space." Helen looked up from her papers. "What kind of energy signatures?" "We're not sure," Bill replied. "Dr. Turner's team is analyzing the data now, but they're unlike anything we've seen before." Helen stood and walked to the window of her office. Outside, she could see the lights of Washington, D.C. spreading out below her. Beyond that, she knew, were the spaceports where human ships were being built faster than ever before. "Keep me informed," she said, "and make sure our defense forces are ready. We may be alone out here, but we're not defenseless." Colonel Ben Parker was already thinking the same thing. He commanded the Terran Defense Force from his headquarters on Luna over the past 25 years. He had built humanity's military into something the Coalition had never imagined without Coalition. Restrictions on weapons development, humans had been free to explore every possible avenue of military technology. They had developed new types of missiles, energy weapons, and defensive systems. Their ships were faster and more heavily armed than anything in the Coalition fleet. "Colonel, we're receiving the sensor data from Dr. Turner's team," reported Major Kate Sullivan, his chief of staff. "These energy signatures are massive. If they're ships, they're bigger than anything we've ever built." Ben studied the data on his screen. The readings were disturbing. Whatever was out there was powerful and heading toward Coalition space. "Begin alert status 2, he ordered. "I want all defense stations on standby. And start moving our patrol fleets to the border region." "Sir, should we try to contact the Coalition?" Kate asked. Ben was quiet for a moment. 25 years ago, the Coalition had thrown humanity out of their space. They had called humans dangerous and aggressive. They had said humanity was a threat to galactic peace. "No," Ben said finally. "Let them handle their own problems. We have our own people to protect." But even as he said it, Ben knew that whatever was coming might be too big for anyone to handle alone. The galaxy was about to become a much more dangerous place. In the depths of space, far beyond the edge of Coalition territory, something ancient and hungry was stirring. It had been waiting for centuries, growing stronger, building its forces. Now it was ready to feed. The Devourers were coming. The emergency signal came through at 0300 hours, Earth time. President Helen Price was pulled from her sleep by the urgent beeping of her secure communicator. She had been expecting bad news for weeks, ever since the strange energy readings had appeared on the sensors. "Madam President," said Captain Bill Rogers over the comm, "we're receiving a transmission from Coalition space. It's on an emergency frequency." Helen sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. The Coalition had not spoken to humanity in 25 years. For them to break their silence now meant something terrible was happening. "Put it through to my office," she said, already reaching for her clothes. "I'll be there in 5 minutes." The transmission was weak and filled with static, but the voice was unmistakable. It was Admiral Nexus Prime of the Ethereal Collective, the same species that had led the vote to expel humanity from Coalition space. "To any human authority who receives this message," Nexus Prime's voice was tight with desperation, "the Coalition formally requests immediate assistance. We are under attack by an unknown enemy. Our forces are being destroyed. We need your help." Helen stared at the screen in shock. She had imagined many scenarios over the years, but this was not one of them. The proud Coalition, begging for humanity's help. "How many Coalition worlds have been attacked?" she asked Captain Rogers. "According to the transmission, 7 so far," he replied. "And they're all gone. Complete destruction." Helen felt her blood run cold. 7 worlds. Billions of people dead. "Get me Dr. Turner on the line," she ordered. "And wake up Colonel Parker. We need to understand what we're dealing with." Dr. Alex Turner was already awake when the call came. He had been working through the night, analyzing the energy signatures that had been growing stronger for weeks. Now he understood what they were seeing. "The attackers are calling themselves the Devourers," he explained to President Price over the video link. Based on the Coalition data, they're unlike anything we've encountered before. They appear to be biomechanical entities that consume matter and convert it into more of themselves. How is that possible? Helen asked. We don't know, Alex admitted. But according to the Coalition reports, they attacked the outer world of Kepler 442b 3 days ago. The planet had a population of 2 billion. Within 6 hours, there was nothing left but an empty shell of rock. Helen felt sick. What happened? To the people? Converted, Alex said quietly. The Devourers seemed to break down all organic and inorganic matter and rebuild it into their own structures. Ships, weapons, more Devourers. It's like they're turning entire worlds into factories. Colonel Ben Parker joined the conversation from his command center on Luna. His face was grim as he reviewed the tactical data. The Coalition fleet engaged them at Rigel 7, he reported. They had over 300 ships. The battle lasted 4 hours. Only 12 Coalition vessels escaped. How is that possible? Helen asked. The Coalition has the most advanced military in the galaxy. Not anymore, Ben said. According to the survivor reports, Coalition energy weapons are actually making the Devourers stronger. Every time they fire at them, the Devourers absorb the energy and grow larger. Helen leaned back in her chair. The Coalition's greatest strength had become their greatest weakness. For centuries, they had relied on sophisticated energy-based weapons and defensive systems. Now they were facing an enemy that could turn that technology against them. What about our weapons? She asked. Ben smiled grimly. That's the interesting part. The Coalition data suggests that kinetic weapons might actually work against these things. Bullets, missiles, explosives, all the primitive technology they said we were too attached to. Dr. Sarah Blake had been studying the Devourer samples that the Coalition had managed to transmit. As humanity's leading expert on alien biology, she was trying to understand how these creatures worked. They're not entirely organic, she explained to the Emergency Council meeting. They're some kind of hybrid between living tissue and advanced machinery, but there's something else. They seem to be designed to counter energy-based attacks. Designed by who? President Price asked. That's the question, Sarah replied. These things didn't evolve naturally. Someone or something created them, and they were specifically built to fight enemies that use energy weapons. Captain Nick Davis had volunteered for the most dangerous mission of his career. His ship, the Horizon Scout, was humanity's most advanced reconnaissance vessel. It was also the only human ship that could get close to Devourer territory without being detected. I'm in position, he reported back to Earth. The Altair system is completely dark. No energy signatures from the planet at all. What do you see? Came the voice of Mission Control. Nick adjusted his sensors for maximum resolution. What he saw made his stomach turn. The planet is still there, but it's not the same. The surface is covered in some kind of metallic growth. It's like the entire world has been turned into a machine. Any sign of the Devourers? Negative. But there are structures on the surface. Big ones. They look like shipyards or factories. Nick paused as his sensors picked up something new. Wait, I'm detecting movement in orbit. Something big is coming around the planet. The Devourer ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of the largest human vessel. Its hull was a mixture of organic curves and mechanical angles covered in what looked like living metal. As Nick watched, smaller ships detached from its surface and began moving in his direction. They've spotted me, he reported. I'm getting out of here. The Horizon Scout's quantum jump drive powered up just as the first Devourer weapon fired. Nick felt the ship shake as some kind of energy beam passed through the space where they had been a second before. Jump successful, he reported as the stars shifted around him. I'm clear, but those things are fast. And they're building more ships. Back on Earth, President Price was reviewing humanity's options. The Coalition had finally sent a formal delegation, led by the elderly Ambassador X9. The Corvan looked tired and defeated as he sat across from her in the White House. We were wrong, X9 said simply. We thought humanity was the threat. We were blind to the real danger. How many worlds have you lost? Helen asked. 15, as of this morning, Vex-9 replied. And the attacks are accelerating. Our remaining forces are evacuating the outer systems, but we can't run forever. What makes you think we can help? Helen asked. You said we were too primitive, too aggressive. Vex-9 looked down at his hands. Your weapons. They're based on kinetic force, not energy. According to our analysis, they might be the only thing that can hurt these creatures. Helen stood and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of human ships launching from Earth's orbital stations. The Terran Defense Force was already mobilizing, preparing for whatever was coming. You want us to fight your war, she said. We want to survive, Vex-9 replied. And so do you. The Devourers won't stop with Coalition space. They'll consume everything in their path, including humanity. Helen turned back to face the alien ambassador. What are you offering? Full restoration of humanity's place in the Coalition, Vex-9. Side, equal partnership. Access to all our technology and trade networks. An end to the exile. And if we refuse? Vex-9 was quiet for a long moment. Then we all die. The Devourers will consume the Coalition, grow stronger, and eventually reach human space. You might delay them for a while, but in the end, they'll consume you too. Helen looked at the tactical displays on her wall. Human ships were already moving toward the border, ready to defend their territory. But would it be enough against an enemy that could consume entire worlds? I'll need to consult with my advisors, she said finally. Of course, Vex-9 replied. But please don't take too long. According to our projections, the Devourers will reach the Coalition core worlds within 6 months. After that, it may be too late for all of us. As the ambassador left, Helen stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an ancient enemy was consuming world after world, growing stronger with each victory. The Coalition had rejected humanity, called them dangerous and primitive. Now those same qualities might be the only thing standing between civilization and total annihilation. The galaxy was about to find out just how dangerous humans could be when they had something to protect. The debate in the Human Senate lasted 3 days. Representatives from every human world had traveled to Earth to decide humanity's fate. President Helen Price watched from the gallery as speaker after speaker stood to argue for or against helping the Coalition. They threw us out, shouted Senator Mark Williams from New Tokyo. They called us savages and warmongers. Now they want us to save them? Let them face their own problems. And what happens when the Devourers finish with them? Replied Senator Carol Davis from the agricultural world of Harvest Prime. Do we think they'll just stop? These things consume everything. They'll come for us next. Ambassador Vex-9 sat quietly in the diplomatic section, his old face showing the strain of waiting. 3 more Coalition worlds had fallen while the humans debated. The ethereal collective's home system was now under direct threat. Finally, President Price stood to address the Senate. The chamber fell silent as she walked to the speaking platform. 25 years ago, the Coalition rejected us, she began. They said we were too dangerous, too aggressive, too different. They were afraid of what we might become. Well, now we know what we became. We became strong. We became independent. We became capable of standing on our own. The senators listened intently as she continued, but we also became something else. We became the only species in the galaxy with weapons that can hurt these Devourers. The Coalition's energy weapons feed them. Our kinetic weapons can destroy them. That makes us the only hope for billions of innocent people. Senator Williams stood up. With respect, Madam President, why should we risk human lives for people who rejected us? Helen looked directly at him. Because that's what humans do. We help people who need help, even when they don't deserve it, even when they've wronged us. That's not a weakness. That's what makes us human. The vote was close, but humanity chose to help. Within hours, the largest military mobilization in human history began. General Tom Wright stood in the war room at Terran Command, watching as ship after ship appeared on the tactical display. The human fleet was massive, but it was also everything. They had. If this plan failed, humanity would be defenseless. How many ships do we have ready? He asked his aide, Colonel Lucy Green. 2,700 combat vessels, she replied. Plus support ships, transports, and mobile factories. It's the entire Terran Defense Force and weapons production. Every industrial world is working at maximum capacity. We're producing disruption torpedoes around the clock. Dr. Turner says these new weapons should prevent the Devourers from converting destroyed matter into new ships. Tom nodded. The disruption torpedoes were humanity's newest weapon, designed specifically to fight the Devourers. Instead of just destroying enemy ships, they would scramble the conversion process that let the Devourers grow stronger from defeated enemies. Admiral Kate Sullivan received her orders while her flagship, Terra's Wrath, was still being fitted with the latest weapons. She would command the largest space fleet in human history, and she knew many of her people wouldn't be coming home. Admiral, the Coalition liaison is here to see you, reported Captain Ron Mitchell, her chief of staff. The Coalition officer was a young ethereal named Veltan. He looked nervous as he entered Kate's ready room. Admiral Sullivan, he said with a slight bow, I am here to coordinate between your forces and ours. What forces? Kate asked bluntly. From what I understand, you've lost most of your fleet. Veltan looked embarrassed. We have approximately 400 ships remaining in fighting condition. Most are escort vessels and support craft. Our battle fleet was destroyed in the early engagements. Kate studied the tactical data on her tablet. 400 Coalition ships against an enemy that had already destroyed thousands. It was hopeless without human intervention. What's your evacuation status? She asked. We've managed to evacuate 12 worlds so far, Veltan replied. But the process is slow. Our transport capacity is limited. We'll handle the evacuations, Kate said. Human ships are faster and we have more of them. Your job is to coordinate with our targeting systems and provide intelligence on Devourer movements. The first test of human weapons came at the mining world of Kepler 438b. Captain Paul Rogers led a small squadron of human destroyers against a Devourer scouting force that was preparing to consume the planet's orbital stations. Target the lead ship, Paul ordered. Fire disruption torpedoes. The human weapons struck the Devourer vessel with a series of bright explosions. Instead of absorbing the energy like they did with Coalition weapons, the alien ship's hull began to crack and break apart. It's working, reported his weapons officer. Their hull is fragmenting. They can't repair the damage. Within minutes, the entire Devourer force was destroyed. The orbital stations were saved, and more importantly, the Devourers couldn't convert the wreckage into new ships. All ships, this is Rogers, Paul broadcast to the fleet. Human weapons are effective against Devourer ships. Repeat, human weapons work. The news spread through both fleets like wildfire. For the first time since the war began, there was hope. Dr. Alex Turner worked frantically in his laboratory, analyzing captured Devourer technology. The samples that Captain Davis had brought back were unlike anything he had ever seen. The metal is alive, he explained to Dr. Sarah Blake over their video link. It's not just machinery. It's some kind of hybrid between organic tissue and advanced alloys. But there's a weakness. What kind of weakness? Sarah asked. The conversion process requires a specific energy frequency to work, Alex said, pointing to his data. Coalition weapons operate on that exact frequency. That's why they make the Devourers stronger. But our weapons use kinetic energy and chemical explosives. They disrupt the conversion process instead of feeding it. So we're not just damaging them, Sarah realized. We're preventing them from healing and growing. Exactly. And the disruption torpedoes take it one step further. They scramble the frequency completely, making it impossible for any nearby Devourers to function properly. The intelligence was immediately transmitted to Admiral Sullivan's fleet. Human weapons weren't just effective against the Devourers. They were the perfect counter to everything the enemy did. Meanwhile, the main Devourer fleet was approaching the Nexus system, home to the Coalition's capital world. Long-range sensors showed thousands of enemy ships, far more than had been seen in any previous battle. "They're not just attacking," observed Dr. Blake as she studied the tactical data. "They're converging. This looks like their main assault force." President Price stood in the Situation Room, watching as human and coalition ships took their positions around Nexus Prime. Everything depended on this battle. If they lost here, both civilizations would fall. Admiral Sullivan reports. "Ready," announced General Wright. "All human ships are in position. Coalition forces standing by," added Ambassador Thex9. His people might not be able to fight effectively, but they could provide support and coordination. "The Devourer fleet will arrive in 6 hours," reported the sensor operator. Estimated. Enemy strength is 4,000 vessels. Helen looked at the numbers on the screen. 4,000 Devourer ships against less than 3,000 human vessels and 400 coalition support craft. The odds were not good, but they were better than anyone had hoped for just weeks ago. "Send a message to all ships," she ordered. "Today we find out if the coalition was right to fear us. Today we show them what humans can do when we're protecting something that matters." In space around Nexus Prime, human ships moved into attack formation. The crews were ready, the weapons were loaded, and the targeting computers were locked onto the approaching enemy fleet. Captain Lisa Park, now commanding her own destroyer, spoke for all of them when she sent her final message before the battle. "This is for everyone who ever called us primitive. This is for everyone who said we were too dangerous. Today they find out they were right, we are dangerous. But we're dangerous to the right people." The Devourers were coming, but humanity was ready for them. 25 years of isolation had made them stronger, faster, and deadlier than anyone had imagined. The galaxy was about to witness the return of humanity, and it would not be gentle. The Devourer fleet appeared on the edge of the Nexus system like a dark cloud blocking out the stars. Admiral Kate Sullivan watched from the Bridge of Terras, wroth as thousands of enemy ships moved toward them in perfect formation. Each Devourer vessel was massive, covered in the same living metal that had consumed 15 coalition worlds. "Enemy fleet detected," reported Commander Jim Walsh from the sensor station. 4,200 ships. "They're bigger than our intelligence estimates." Kate looked at the tactical display. The human fleet was spread out in a defensive formation around Nexus Prime, while the remaining coalition ships provided support from the rear. It was the largest space battle in galactic history, and everything depended on the next few hours. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan," she broadcast to the fleet. "Today we prove that humanity belongs in this galaxy. Today we show them what we're made of. Fire when ready." The battle began with a massive exchange of fire. Human ships launched thousands of missiles and kinetic projectiles at the approaching Devourer fleet. The enemy returned fire with their conversion beams, but the human ships were too fast and too spread out to be easy targets. Captain Paul Rogers commanded a squadron of destroyers on the left flank. His ships danced between the enemy beams, firing disruption torpedoes at any Devourer vessel that came within range. "Direct hit on the lead ship," reported his weapons officer. "Their hull is breaking apart." The Devourer vessel tried to repair itself, but the disruption torpedoes had scrambled its conversion process. Instead of healing, the ship continued to fragment until it finally exploded in a brilliant flash of light. "That's how we do it," Paul shouted over the comm. "Keep firing. Don't let them get close enough to use their conversion beams on our ships." On the right flank, Captain Lisa Park was leading her own attack group against a cluster of smaller Devourer vessels. Her ship, the New Horizon, had been upgraded with the latest human weapon systems. "Targeting the command ship," she announced. "All vessels, concentrate fire." A dozen human ships fired at once, sending hundreds of kinetic projectiles toward the enemy command vessel. The Devourer ship's living metal hull absorbed the first few impacts, but as more and more projectiles struck home, cracks began to appear across its surface. "It's working," Lisa called out. "Their armor can't handle sustained kinetic bombardment. Keep firing." The enemy command ship tried to retreat, but it was too late. A final salvo of disruption torpedoes tore through its weakened hull, and the massive vessel broke apart in a cascade of explosions. In the center of the battle, Admiral Sullivan was coordinating the main attack against the largest Devourer ships. These were the factory vessels, massive constructs that could convert captured matter into new Devourer units. "Target the factory ships first," she ordered. "If we can destroy them, we can stop the enemy from reinforcing their fleet." The Terra's Wrath and 5 other human battleships moved into attack formation. Their heavy guns fired salvo after salvo of high-explosive shells at the nearest factory ship. The enemy vessel was enormous, easily 10 times the size of any human ship, but its bulk made it an easy target. "Hull breach on the enemy factory ship," reported the tactical officer. "Internal explosions detected." The factory ship tried to use its conversion beams to repair the damage, but the disruption fields from the human weapons were interfering with its systems. Instead of healing, the damage continued to spread throughout the massive vessel. "All ships, focus fire on that breach," Sullivan ordered. "Let's finish this." The concentrated firepower of the human battleships tore the factory ship apart from the inside out. As it exploded, the blast took out 2 smaller Devourer vessels that had been too close to the factory ship, but the battle was far from over. The Devourers had learned from the early exchanges and were adapting their tactics. Instead of fighting at long range, they began to close in, trying to get close enough to use their conversion beams on human ships. Captain Lucy Green found herself in the middle of the fiercest fighting when a group of Devourer ships broke through the human lines and headed straight for Nexus Prime. "All ships intercept course," she ordered her squadron. "We can't let them reach the planet." Her ships raced to intercept the enemy vessels, firing everything they had. The Devourers returned fire with their conversion beams, and Lucy watched in horror as one of her destroyers was caught in the alien weapons field. The human ship began to change, its hull reshaping itself as the Devourer technology tried to convert it into enemy material. But the ship's crew had been prepared for this possibility. "Self-destruct initiated," came the voice of the doomed ship's captain. "Tell my family I died fighting." The destroyer exploded before the conversion process could be completed, denying the Devourers the materials they needed to build new ships. "That's what courage looks like," Lucy said quietly. Then louder, "All ships, continue attack, make their sacrifice count." The turning point of the battle came when Dr. Alex Turner's new weapon was finally ready. He had been working frantically aboard a mobile laboratory ship, developing a way to disrupt the Devourer's command and control systems. "Admiral Sullivan, this is Dr. Turner," he called over the comm. "The quantum disruptor is ready. If we can get close enough to their command ship, we can shut down their entire fleet coordination." Kate looked at the tactical display. The Devourer command ship was in the center of their formation, protected by hundreds of smaller vessels. Getting close to it would be almost impossible. "I'll take a strike team," volunteered Captain Ron Mitchell. "My ships are fast enough to break through their lines." "It's a suicide mission," Kate replied. "Maybe," Ron said. "But if it works, we end this war today." Kate was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Do it. Take 12 ships and punch through 2. Their command vessel will provide covering fire." Ron's strike team launched immediately, racing toward the enemy formation at maximum speed. Human ships throughout the fleet provided covering fire, trying to clear a path through the Devourer defenses. 3 of Ron's ships were destroyed before they reached the enemy lines, but the remaining 9 broke through and headed straight for the command ship. The massive alien vessel tried to defend itself, but Ron's ships were too fast and too determined. "Deploying quantum disruptor," Ron announced as his ship closed to point-blank range with the enemy command vessel. "If this works, their coordination should collapse." The quantum disruptor activated with a burst of energy that was invisible to the human eye but devastating to Devourer systems. Throughout the enemy fleet, ships suddenly stopped moving in formation. Their perfect coordination was broken. "It worked," shouted Dr. Turner. "Their command network is down. They can't coordinate their attacks anymore." With their coordination gone, the Devourer fleet became a collection of individual ships fighting without support. A human fleet pressed their advantage, systematically destroying enemy vessels one by one. The battle raged for 6 more hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. One by one, the Devourer ships were destroyed or disabled. Those that tried to retreat were hunted down by fast human pursuit ships. When the last enemy vessel was destroyed, a cheer went up throughout the human fleet. They had done the impossible. They had defeated an enemy that had seemed unstoppable, but the victory had come at a cost. Over 300 human ships had been destroyed, and thousands of brave men and women had given their lives to save the galaxy. In the aftermath of the battle, Admiral Sullivan received a transmission from Nexus Prime. It was Prime Counselor X9, and he was speaking not just to her, but to all of humanity. "People of Earth," the old Corvan said, his voice filled with emotion. 25 years ago, we made the greatest mistake in Coalition history. We rejected you because we were afraid of your strength. Today that strength saved us all." He paused, gathering himself before continuing. "We formally invite humanity to rejoin the Galactic Coalition, not as junior members, but as equal partners. You have earned your place among the stars through courage, sacrifice, and determination. We were wrong to exile you. We hope you can forgive us." President Helen Price responded from Earth, her words broadcast throughout Coalition space. "We forgive you," she said simply. "Not because you deserve it, but because forgiveness is what allows us to move forward together. The galaxy is big enough for all of us, and there are threats out there that none of us can face alone." In the months that followed, the galaxy changed dramatically. The old Coalition hierarchy was dissolved and replaced with the new Galactic Republic, where all member species had equal representation. Human colonies were established throughout former Coalition space, and joint research stations began working on technologies that combined the best of human and alien knowledge. Schools throughout the galaxy began teaching human history alongside that of other species. Children learned about the Great Rejection and how humanity's exile had ultimately made them stronger. They learned that being different wasn't something to fear, but something to celebrate. Ambassador X9, now very old but still sharp, often visited human worlds to speak about the lessons of the war. His favorite audience was always children, who listened with wide eyes as he told them about the humans who had saved the galaxy. "Never forget," he would tell them, "that the qualities that make someone